Praravindekshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamathrojvalam Svatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasana Dhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamaham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hrudi Vishamanasasvam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalanarodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. I'll be reading from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject of Atma Vichara. And the compilation is done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. And we have been looking at the second portion of the book where Bhagavan had answered between 1936 to 1950 on Atma Vicharam. And we have, last week we looked at the 20th question. And the 20th and the 21st question is related, so I will read them together again. And by Bhagavan's grace, we will contemplate on it and then have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Following that, we will be having our President Sarada Akka talking about Ramana Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated and presented in Ramana Gita by Ganapati Muni. Question number 20. Devotee, did not Mr. Brunton find you in London? Was it only a dream? Bhagavan, yes, he had the vision. He saw me in his mind. Devotee, did he not see you? Did he not see your concrete form? Yes, he is still in his mind. So the first question is, did not Mr. Brunton find you in London? Was it only a dream? Bhagavan says, yes, he had the vision. He saw me in his mind. Then devotee asks, did he not see your concrete form? And Bhagavan says, yes, still in his mind. What is Bhagavan saying? Even this solid concrete objects that we are experiencing is only a mental imagination. And Bhagavan says, Kabhalita Ghana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya. This Ghana Vishwarupa, which is the solid which appears, but when contemplated, when we do the vichara, it can be seen how it actually is in the knowledge, and it is absorbed in that true knowledge. So, Bhagavan here says that, and we also know the incident where Bhagavan was asked, what would you request of Arunachala if he appeared in name and form in front of you? And Bhagavan says, I would ask him not to come in that way and bewilder us. I am paraphrasing it here. So, in a sense that other than self, Bhagavan is saying there is nothing else. In the pot and the pot space and the actual universal space that we have been contemplating for the last few weeks, there is absolutely no differences. Actually, the space has no difference with whether it's within or the space outside. It doesn't know within and without and all of it. But there is some entity which seems to create these differences, that something is within, something is without. That, what is that entity? What is that which gives this narration that something is within and something is without? Creates a division where there isn't any division. If there is no division and somebody is going on saying, no, there is division, then it has to be only an illusion. It can't be real, because reality is one and it is undivided. And therefore, the one who is imaginarily creating the division, it has to be an imaginative thing itself or non-existent itself. And Nandakumarji also shared in the morning satsang that the wave doesn't know anything about, the ocean doesn't know anything about the wave. For the ocean, it is just the ocean. But only an onlooker, an imaginative figure which uses thoughts, creates this difference that this is ocean, that is wave, and makes a difference. And because that onlooker or that person who is making the difference, giving that narration, is given all the reality, instead of looking at that common truth, that one truth which alone is, we can see how much of bewilderment that we go through. So, what should one do? One should see any reality to the mind, to the thought. That's all Bhagavan is saying. If we don't do, if the mind is not given reality, the mind is nothing but a stream of thoughts. And if none of the thoughts, we need not say thoughts may not rise, thoughts may not stay, and thoughts may not go. We just don't have to give it any reality. That's all. If we do so, and then we see that what is there is only the self. Brahman alone is. Self alone is. In fact, self is so natural. It is just that we give reality to an imagination in the mind, and we feel that what is so natural and one is not at all one. I have to do so much of effort. I have to do this sadhana. I have to do that sadhana. And all of that becomes real because of that giving reality to an imaginative entity which is just dividing something which is not at all divided. Let's think about that. Let's contemplate about it. What is the effort that we end up doing every day by entertaining that division? If we just imagine how much of time, how much of energy, and how much of, like, we not only we believe in that division, we hold on to that division to acquire more knowledge, which is again outward turn, holding on to that division as real. And therefore, we are in that vicious loop because we're given the fundamental reality to the division itself. So the mind, when the name in the form of a thought appears, the form also appears, and both of them are unreal. It's the name which appears as the form. But to whom? When we inquire that, then we see that Brahman alone is. And if we understand the gravity of the problem that we get into when we give reality to the idea of division, one would stop entertaining it. One would think very strongly about why Bhagavan's Atma Vichara is a real medicine. Because that medicine, as the division is rising in the form of a thought, asks us to diligently inquire to whom is this, and see that it is for me, the individual, who itself is an imaginative entity. And then further, by inquiring who am I, and realizing that this entire division, if I were to entertain, there is no end to it. It makes everything appear so real, whereas what is so natural, so much given to all of us, is that there is only one truth, which we are. But if we hold on to this imagination of division, if we entertain this thought of division, then there is so much of effort, so much of thing that we continue to do. So all we need to do is not give reality to it, not entertain it, but understand that there is only the self, there is only that presence, there is only that being, consciousness, and silence. All thoughts rise, sustain, and then again have to get back to that truth itself, get absorbed in it. And therefore, all the name, all the forms get absorbed in that real gnana, real knowledge, where self alone is. In that true knowledge, everything is absorbed. Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa, in that knowledge. And then the knowledge, Bhagavan says, there is no gnani also. The gnana alone remains. Even the individual idea is a sort of a gnana, but because it is an idea of division, and which is not real, therefore it is called ajnana. Then naturally gnana alone remains and shines, and which is what Bhagavan takes us and makes us free of all this division by repeatedly inquiring every thought when it rises, cutting it at the root. And the root is the I, the first and the foremost division. By repeatedly cutting it at the root, Bhagavan makes it that the truth alone is effortlessly given, effortlessly present for as the substratum, as the reality. All we need to do, all the effort is only to remove the division or giving reality to the division. And if we don't entertain it, we see that the mind is absorbed in that one truth which alone is. And for that, Bhagavan has given us the path of Atma Vichara, wherein he says, no matter how many thoughts rise, whatever may be the nature of those thoughts, whether it is good, bad, ugly, spiritual, non spiritual, doesn't matter because it has come out of the division as I to an imaginative entity. It becomes important to question to whom is this thought, and the answer will come as I, which is also an imaginative thought. Thereupon, if you really inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? And see that there is absolutely, it was all an imagination, and simply remain holding on to that I because it is unreal, it gets absorbed in the truth where there is no I thought also. The truth shines automatically by itself. And that is the path given to us by Bhagavan. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. The next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय. Over to Sharda ka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifested as Ramana, we have been able to meditate on his teachings, on the path of self-inquiry, through the answers given by Bhagavan to many questioners directly about this path, and to be able to practice the self-inquiry, and to continue the meditations on self-inquiry through Bhagavan's answers on related topics as well. Topics or areas of sadhana, spiritual practice, which have a close bearing on the practice of self-inquiry. And these are in the form of question answers recorded by Ganapati Muni in 18 chapters in Sanskrit under the title Ramana Gita. On the lines of the Bhagavad Gita, this also has 18 chapters. And we are presently meditating on the chapter 5, the spiritual heart. And we found Bhagavan explaining what the spiritual heart is. He first says that it is the source. Any description of the spiritual heart is only a bhavana, a mental concept. It has to be experienced. We find in Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan says that the self cannot be thought of. To be it, Ullade ullal unar. You have to be the self. To be the self is to know the self. To be the heart is to know the heart. It has to be an anubhava. However, Bhagavan has described it after giving us the warning that one must not confuse the concept for the experience. Because in self-inquiry, Bhagavan is very clear that every concept must be understood to be what it is, a concept, a thought. When we have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, if somebody has also, if they come out of the Samadhi and have a thought that I was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one has converted the Samadhi into a bhavana at the time when one has come out of the Samadhi. This is what Bhagavan is saying. But one must recognize that the self is naturally that. It is not a question of going into the self and coming out of the self. So even going into the self and coming out of the self would be a bhavana. So Bhagavan is saying that it is a bhavana. The spiritual heart is a bhavana. However, it is a very, very important support which Bhagavan has given us to self-inquiry, especially the aspect of self-inquiry which is whence am I? Where from does the I thought arise? Aham ayam kuto bhavati. Where from does it rise? Bhagavan asks in Upadesha Saram. Again, in Ashtakam, Bhagavan says, without the I thought, no other thought is there. In Raham enum நினைவெனில் பிற ஒன்றும் இன்று அதுவரை. பிற நினைவெழில், if other thoughts arise, ஆர்க்கு, எர்க்கு. So, for whom is this thought? And Bhagavan also says, from where does this I spring? Erku, from where? Yendre, aham uditalam yedu, which is the point, which is the source from which the I thought arises. Yedu ena ullaldu. So you dive deep within, asking from where does this I thought arise? Such diving deep, ulat visurin. If you inquire thus with the mind focused on the heart, then you become the emperor, the supreme emperor. Oru kudai nilar kove, says Bhagavan in Ashtakam also. So what is Bhagavan giving us? The sadhana over here. In the first verses, when he says, it is a bhavana to describe it. But what is the anubhava of the heart? It is the source. He says, aham vrittis samastanam vrittinam moolamujyate nirgacchati yatoham dhi. What is the heart? To describe the heart is a bhavana, is a concept. What is the experience of the heart? It is the source of the I thought. Nirgacchati yatoham dhi. So, where it subsides, that is the heart. Bhagavan therefore gives the method of Vensamai. Try to be aware of the source into which the I thought subsides and the source from which it arises. That source is the heart. It is not a physical space which is indicated as a support, but its true nature is that it is the source of all thoughts, because all thoughts are dependent on the I thought, and the I thought rises from the self. Then he describes for us the process by which the I thought rises from the self and then moves through the Sushumna Nadi to the Sahasrara or the brain. And from there, in the form of other thoughts, by pervading throughout the body. This is what Bhagavan explains in physical terms. In the subtler terms throughout the body, because Bhagavan has explained to us that body is consisting of all the 5 koshas. Yet pancha koshatmakam asti deham. It is not only the physiological body, which is in Upadesha Saram, which Bhagavan says is vigraha. It is not merely the physical body, which consists of the 5 sensations. Indriya, vigraha, indriya, prana. It is not merely the pranic body, the mind and the intellect, and it is not even the non-knowing, but it's a combination of all this. So, panchakoshatmakam asti deham. So, when Bhagavan says that the Shakti or the energy of the self pervades our body, it doesn't mean that it pervades only the physical body. It means that it pervades every aspect. It pervades the breath and it pervades thought, which is all part of the body, which is part of the 5 koshas. The 5 sheaths of the body are all pervaded by the energy of the self through the I thought. So we saw that the body concept, which can be gross or subtle, is springing from the I thought. and samsari manujo bhavet. He becomes an individual, becomes worldly, attached to the world, samsari. By what reason? By reason of the light of the self moving through the sahasrara or the I thought, throughout the identification, throughout the body, which is experienced physically, which is experienced mentally, and which could be any kind of body. I may have a vision, or any one of us could have an imagination or a vision of being vast, of being the sky. Lucia Osborne, she had a vision, or she had the experience that she was Mother Earth. She could feel everything in the earth, she says. She could feel the grass growing from her. She could feel the trees growing from her. She could actually experience herself as Mother Earth, as Earth. And we know about Earth or the various planets being seen as individuals. What is the significance of this experience of hers? One, that one is not limited to this body. In fact, how wide is our body? Our body, if you take it as the mental body of thoughts, it is as wide as the universe, because we can contain the entire universe in our mind, which Bhagavan will tell in the later verses about the heart. He is going to say how the entire universe is contained in the mind and the mind is contained in the heart. So here he is describing to us, this is the way to get back. How has the I arisen? It has, what has happened in the process is the I has arisen as an independent entity, and it has attached itself to the body, any body, physical, gross body or subtle body, it has attached itself to, and it is experiencing a world. So Bhagavan is asking us to pull back to the source from the world, which is experienced as thoughts in the Sahasrara. Pull the attention back to the I by asking, for whom are these thoughts? And then one could ask, who am I? Or one can try to see, where from is this I arising? In this concept, Nandakumarji sometimes tells us about Bhagavan's explanation in one place in the talks, where Bhagavan says, when Samai is the devotional approach to self-inquiry. Why is it the devotional approach? Why is the concept of the heart, the spiritual heart, a devotional approach? Because we are aware that there is a divine source, the self within us. All of us feel the I is within us. I feel I am within my body. I don't feel I am outside my body. None of us feel we are outside the body. We feel that I am within this body, limited to the body and within the body. But what is this telling us? That the heart, the spiritual heart is within us, means the divine or the self can be experienced within the body. Sadhu Om Swami, in his song of Dhyana, the Dhyanam song, he says, Ingu kanda piragudan இருப்பதெல்லாம் அவன் மயம், எங்குமுள்ள கடவுளை இதய குகையில் காணலாம். That supreme, that divine, which is all pervading, can be experienced, can be seen revealed in the heart. Hridaya kuhara madhye, இதய குகையில் காணலாம். இங்கு கண்ட பிறகுதான் இருப்பதெல்லாம் அவன் மயம். Only when we experience the self within the heart, we understand that the self is all pervading, or God is all pervading, the Supreme is all pervading. So, this is an important link to the divine. And it means also there is faith. We have the faith that Spurana. Aham ahamiti sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. Aham, 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 aham. It is shining as I. And that's why some of the people have a vision of Lord, one of the devotees, David Frawley, has a vision of Lord Skanda or Subramanya being this Aham Spurana. Shiva is the self, and Skanda is the Aham Spurana, the child of bliss, the child of the self, the child of that Shakti, Shiva Shakti, that consciousness, that Aham Spurana is there. So, this is the indication which Bhagavan is giving us, and he says, if you allow, Bhagavan says, if you don't have Atma Vichara, you will have Loka Vichara. If we don't hold on to Atma Vichara, we will be holding on to only thoughts about the world. Samsari Manujo Bhavet. On the other hand, he says, if somebody is abiding in the self, Atmasthasya Sahasraram Shuddham Jyotirmayam Bhavet. If one is abiding in the self, then what becomes of the nature of the Sahasrara or the I thought? It becomes pure. It becomes effulgent. Atmasthasya sthiti, stha, to be abiding, to be established. Stha means to be established. So, Atmasthasya, those who are established in the self, what is the nature of their Sahasrara? He already told us Sahasrara is the I thought, right? He told us first that from the heart, the I thought arises, and from the I thought, the other thoughts arise. And he said that from the heart, through the Shushumna, the Sahasrara gets lit, which is the normal place of the functioning of the I thought, of the mind. That is the brain, the Sahasrara. And if one allows it from Sahasrara to go to the Deha, to the body concept, the body identity, one becomes a samsari. If, on the other hand, one turns this I thought back to the self, Atmasthasya, you make it abide in the self instead of moving outwards to the body, what will happen? That person Sahasrara becomes Shuddham, it is pure. Jyotirmayam, it is pure light. The pure light of knowledge is reflected. The pure light of knowledge of the self is reflected. This is called the Shuddha Manas, in which the Jnani, the Jivan Mukta, functions. Tatra Jivenna Sankalpo. That one who is abiding in the self, though the Sahasrara is active, though the pure mind is active, There is no sankalpa over there. There is no motivation over there. There is no seed of desire left over there. In Ramana Sahasranama, Jagadishwara Shastri says of Bhagavan, Sarvaramba Parityagi. He who has renounced all aramba, he doesn't start anything. Because why? There is no sankalpa. In Upadesha Saram, Bhagavan says, Krityamasti kim swasthitim yataha aham kritim yo lasati grasitva kim tasya karyam parishishtamasti. What remains for him to do? So tatta jivena sankalpo yadi sannidhyata patet. In case any thought, any motivation tries to arise, any thought tries to arise in the mind of a pure one abiding in the self, it automatically falls. Patet, patet ahanta. The I thought falls down, says Bhagavan in the 40 verses. Here he says Sankalpa will fall down. If you are abiding in the self, by proximity, just because you see the world, again he says, Vijñāyamāna vishayam sannikarshena yadyapi na bhavet yoga bhangaya bhedasyagrahane manaha. In case you perceive something, because that has come close to your senses, your eyes are open, you see something, your ears are open, you hear something. So, sannikarshena, because of their proximity, if you see or hear or you experience anything, na bhavet yoga bhangaya, that person's union with the self is unbroken. So, patit, yadi sannidhyata patit. Now, what is the implication of this for our sadhana? We can understand that until even a single sankalpa arises, we must continue to pursue self-inquiry. Because when the mind is abiding in the self, there can be no sankalpa. This is what Bhagavan is telling here. No sankalpa can arise. No change can happen in that person's union with the self. That yoga will not be disturbed on any account whatsoever. Until one gets into such steady self-abidance, the duty cast upon us as our loving offering to Bhagavan is to hold on to self-inquiry, if possible, at all times, as Bhagavan says in his Appalam song, Santatam Shalipara, or at least whenever possible, to get back to self-inquiry, and also until the self-inquiry becomes steady. See, there is steady abidance. Before that, there is steady practice of self-inquiry. Before that, there is intermittent practice of self-inquiry. When there is intermittent practice of self-inquiry, one has to keep aside a dedicated time for self-inquiry, practice self-inquiry until it becomes a constant Sudarshana Chakra, the practice of self-inquiry, and then that will lead one to abidance, intermittent self-abidance, with the remaining time given to self-inquiry as an undercurrent. Then that self-abidance by Bhagavan's grace will become sthira, it will become sahaja. So until then, by Bhagavan's grace, let us hold on to the practice until it finishes its job for us and makes us stha, Atma stha, as Bhagavan has told us over here. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Thank you, Akka. अपार सच्चित् सुखपरिराशि यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तम् गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Dileep.